to have an approval of the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion that the agenda be approved as presented.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move forward. Looking for the approval of the minutes of our meeting held on August 9th, 2022. I'll look them over and want them to be accurate.
I do, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on August 9th, 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the bank summary of assets, expense reports, and the quarterly bank statement summary.
I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. Oh, it's disabled. Okay, never mind. So as of August 31st, the market value of the portfolio was about 158.4 million, a loss of 5.9 million from the July 31st balance. We had our cap trust quarterly expense of $23,750 and 2 class action handling fees totaling $20. And then we have the quarterly summary. If you guys have any questions about any of that?
Lily, apologies. You can share screen if you want now.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Lily, did we ever get that 5% interest from Chris Love?
We have not yet.
Okay. But he's aware.
He is aware of it. Him and Linda have spoken about it, I think at least twice.
Okay.
So, yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the quarterly bank statements and the summary of assets.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Any discussion, Mr. Chairman? Yeah, looking at page 9.
Oh, sorry, I don't have page numbers on this. Which,
This one right here. Yeah,
This
I think
one?
it's This one
Okay.
right here. Go to the bottom real quick. The quarterly number says 164, which is the same as the
oh, must be,
July end. That should be the same as,
yeah, that you're right. That should
Okay.
be. So look at this column instead.
yeah, so I guess
I'll pull that over.
I would just request an amendment to the motion to say approved with the correction of setting the current quarter column equal to the August 31st column.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good eye.
Yeah, good catch.
Nice if it was that. Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's better than
Yeah.
August.
Okay. With that correction. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Just put that down as a scribblers there.
That's what me doing payroll for the last 2 months.
Okay, got the admin reports. I've got nothing. Tammy?
No, I don't have anything.
Yeah.
Nope. Nothing for me.
Nothing. Jake?
Nope.
Chris?
Nothing.
Lily, no.
Okay, so we have Nicholas Alberan, police officer terminated on July 12th. A letter regarding his options for withdrawal was sent on August 4th. Garrett Day, police officer terminated July 3rd. A letter regarding his options for withdrawal was sent August 4th. Paul Green, police officer terminated on August 19th. A letter regarding his options for withdrawal was sent on August 26th. new police officer hired. First one's not really new, we just received the information from HR. So Kyle Leffler, May 9th. And then Trevor Hagner was August 22nd, and he was a new firefighter that was hired. Then we had a situation with Chester Keaton's estate. I don't know if anyone got to read over this prior to the meeting. So basically, we sent him his August 1st payment. He died, I believe, on the 29th of July. So we requested that payment back so we could send him a prorated portion. The bank said that we received the funds back. We saw them in our account. And so we sent him the prorated portion. And then after that, apparently, the receiving bank has 30 days to reject the first request. So they did that, and then they took that money back from us, that first amount. So essentially, he got 2 payments. They have since reimbursed us, the estate has, so we're whole, but we didn't know if we wanted to adjust how we handle this stuff going forward. Because, let's see here, normally we try to send the prorated portion as soon as possible, because there's always a possibility the bank account could get closed since it's a deceased person's account. But now that we know that there's this 30-day period for that bank to reject what we've taken back, we don't know, do we want to adjust that going forward? So we wait that whole 30 days to give them the prorated amount.
Is this the first time this has happened?
No, Courtney said this has happened in the past. Lorraine Wonderly is the name that comes to mind. So this isn't the first time.
Howard's wife.
Yes. And that was never paid back. That time. We got lucky this time that they paid us back. But if we set that standard going forward and we don't give them that prorated amount till 30 days after, that won't happen.
I don't know if that is a standard thing with all the banks.
That's what Comerica told us, so I have to go off their
Well,
words.
they
I don't know.
I mean, well,
Yeah,
Well, usually an estate's not gonna be closed out in 30 days.
typically not. And if we need to, we can send them a paper check if the account gets closed. It's just, we don't want to have to
Sure.
That'd be
deal
the
with
safer route.
duplicating payments and then
Right.
maybe, or maybe not getting them back.
Yeah, what would happen if they didn't pay the invoice?
Yeah, then we just take a loss for, like Lorraine Wonderly, we took a loss for that. That was like, I think 3 years ago or something like that. So we don't have a policy in regards to this either. It's just, do we want to make that a standard?
maybe we just want to pull it back. Just make the internal process to just issue a paper check.
Mhm.
Wait 30 days and issue a
Yeah,
paper
that's what I was
check?
gonna say.
Well, is it 30 days from death, 30 days from?
30 days from the day we deposited, or from the day we requested the money back, that bank has 30 days to say, oh, no, actually, you can't have that money back. They'll give it to us and then they could still reject it within that 30 days and pull it back. I know, seems ironic.
Yeah,
That seems weird.
Yeah.
I'd say it sounds reasonable to wait that 30-day and then issue. the
Issue a
prorated.
paper check.
Yeah,
Or if it gets returned, then issue a paper check.
right.
I mean, if the state's gonna be open, you say longer than 30 days, you might wanna try it
Mhm. And that's what-
electronically first.
Comerica, our contact there, said if the ACH doesn't work after 30 days, they would automatically do a paper check and just send it out. So,
Yeah, because you never know if it's a mistake, because I believe Chester's wife had passed ahead.
yeah, he's the only survivor, so he was, so,
If it goes through probate, that's not gonna happen real quick.
right.
right. Yeah, so it seems like there's no hurry to send it out. I think we should wait. Because otherwise you could be trying to get it back from an estate instead of a person, and
Yeah, I think it's.
so I think you're right on. I think that makes a lot of sense to wait 30 days. And I don't know whether it makes sense to just do ACH. I don't see why we wouldn't do ACH at that point.
Right, yeah, as long as the account's still open, if it's not, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Then
Paper
they'll get a
check.
paper
Yeah,
check.
that all makes sense.
Yeah,
Then during that 30 days, that would, if there is a surviving spouse, that would give them the time to update bank,
right,
account.
because then they get a new amount and all that. So, yeah,
good. Yeah, thank you for bringing that.
Yeah,
I always have to run into these oddball situations.
I know.
And
You know really
the
well.
only reason I found out about Chester Fasteners, I saw it in the shop.
Yeah, and both of you told me about it, otherwise I wouldn't have had a clue either.
Hmm.
So,
Just keep sending the money.
yeah, until someone
Yeah.
tells us otherwise.
Right.
Live long enough, these names ring bells. You start looking at them a little more seriously.
I guess, should we have a practice around finding out who's passed away? Because let's say you ever retire from the sport, hopefully never, but if you do, and we lose a lot of the historic knowledge of these folks that are retired for 20 years and now passing away, or 30 years and now passing away. So it seems like we need a process to be able to collect the names of those who have passed, so we don't pay money that
Yeah.
we shouldn't.
I'm not sure how we would, other than word of mouth.
I think it's a good question for Mapers, actually. Is anybody going to
Yeah.
Mapers this year?
Yeah.
Nakoma City? is
I
it?
don't think no one's reached out to me about it.
Oh, maybe it's.
That is a good neighbor's question. There's a forum I could post a question
Oh, is
on.
it? Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll do
thanks.
that.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I thought the bank periodically got stuff from Social Security. Maybe I'm thinking of the clerk's office for voting.
Yeah, I know in Big Rapids, the clerk's office would scan the local obituaries every day for voters to,
Mhm.
deceased voters to remove from the voting rolls. But, I mean, that's maybe a little bit.
Need to get the-
Yeah,
Need to
I
get
thought
this-
the bank got it from social security too.
Yeah, I thought there was some sort of checks and balances there. May want to bounce that off. of them.
Yeah, see what they say.
Okay. Okay, old business. Experience study. Who wants to take the floor on that one?
Well, I mean, I can start and then you guys can feel free to jump in. In chatting with Linda this morning, I mean, we really don't have many substantive issues with the content of the experience study. Are really the only bone of contention or sticking point is the investment return assumption, which the actuaries are recommending we lower to, on the high end, 6%. So after talking with Jeremy at Cap Trust, I guess we're a little bit more comfortable with lowering it to 6%, but still have reservations about it. I mean, when you look at MERS, who's currently at 7% in the state, their uniform actuarial assumptions are at 6.85%. Their asset mixes are not markedly different than ours. So, we're comfortable with the 6% change for now. Yeah. I mean, if it comes down to it, it's obviously the board's decision on what they want to do. But,
So didn't they use the argument that the asset allocations that MERS used were different? You're saying they're not?
well,
Okay, they're-
MERS has a little bit maybe wider variety in terms of asset classes than what we do.
Yeah, I think they're taking a little more aggressive, a little
I
more
mean,
risk than what we
they're-
are. We're more conservative.
Yeah, that's what the
So we
actuaries said, yeah.
minimize loss. We may not get the top end of the
Yeah,
gains,
Makes
but
sense.
to protect the fund.
Mhm. Yeah, we're doing it for the right reasons,
Yeah,
but if MERS is more aggressive, they're gonna have a higher return. So
Right.
to me, the fact that if we have 6, they have 6.5 or 6.85, or maybe it's reasonable. I guess, has anybody done the math on that? And but what's the difference driven by the asset allocation?
I don't know that we've done the math necessarily, but, in meeting with I don't have the MERS asset mix in front of me, but, we were at a MERS thing last week and, as we were listening to it, because somebody had asked in the room what their asset mix was, and it wasn't, I mean, gosh, I can't remember. But I mean, they were 55, can't remember if they were 55% equity, or maybe 60% equity, so. You know, but they had a few different asset classes than what we have in our portfolio. But, you know, the state, their uniform actuarial assumptions are 6.85, so. But, you know, one of our struggling points to, you know, talking with Jeremy was that the actuaries seem to be more or less ignoring all of our prior results and focusing more on forward-looking projections rather than backward-looking.
Yeah, that was one of the big things I saw is we were looking for an experience study is what happened between the last period and this period. We didn't really ask them to model it forward. And then did Cap Trust provide us what was our average return over the past?
Yeah, because some of the areas in the experience study, they did look at, they went from 2016 to this year. So they were looking, this is on, and they recommended no change. But then when you get to the assumed rate of return,
Yeah, they based it off of their model and not from data provided by Cap Trust.
I'm
Right,
assuming Cap Trust sent us, Jeremy did like a PowerPoint with us,
Yeah.
which really kind of helped break it down, so I'm gonna see if I can.
He sent that, he didn't send that, I don't recall.
I think he
getting a
just sent it
copy
to
of
me.
Yeah.
So he's talking about the long-term rate of return and how they calculated essentially. Go down to what I found the most helpful. So this page, so he does this column, current capital assumptions, and this column, historical. And he was looking at the arithmetic return in the middle. So he said, you know, we're basing it off of current capital market assumptions. These are the different, we're at 5.68%, and here's the difference between what they're recommending and what we have currently, so. But then if you look over at historical, we're in like 7% range, so there's a disconnect we all kind of have,
Between historical.
right?
Yeah, I'm less concerned about the difference between historical and future because the economy has been hot in the last 10 years. This has been really rocking. The stock market has gone with it.
Yeah,
I think with the inflation and everything else that's come over the last few years and people think there is a reset. There's not enough labor in the market to keep it growing as fast as it was, right? Labor shortages. So I guess to me, the forecasts are going to be a point below or 2 points below where we were in the last 10 years or so. That makes sense. So I guess I don't feel wed to looking at, hey, it's been growing 7% plus, it should keep growing. I'm actually pretty comfortable with this lower number from that standpoint.
and that's essentially what Jeremy
Yeah,
said too.
right.
So,
Mhm.
and
You
then
said that's what
hopefully,
Jeremy said too?
Yes.
we may assume 6%, but hopefully we'd have 7,
Right.
you know, or better. The getting into the tail end of the report, the thing that I had concern about was page 27. This impact report. And they used the 6/30/21 as the baseline valuation. The bugger that we got earlier. And then assumed a couple changes. So there were a couple of them there, the demographic assumptions. There was a slight change there. But if we looked at we taking the proposed demographic and then the merit and seniority pay increase assumptions and lowered that 6% or 6.5 down to 6%. the city's contribution rate jumps up considerably of what it will be for this next year.
Sizable.
Sizable.
Yeah. Because off the last one, we had gained 0.5%
Right.
off the last study, and this changes it
Right,
in that scenario by 11.65%.
yeah, I mean,
You're looking at
it
the
went
city
from
normal cost.
35.60 down to 34.87. And then we didn't have, what was the 401H is gone, so there's not the funding there, which was also gonna affect the millage.
Mhm.
But if you go with this jacked up percentage of payroll for the city's contribution, I'm not sure how happy the commission's gonna be.
Yes, what is the demographic assumption changes? I'm trying to remember if those are
That was,
age related or something of that sort.
it was age, and then survivor benefits. We were assuming all males, all females were married. And that should change. It was back here. We basically assumed that there would be one extra survivor in the new assumptions.
Next, that's on the conservative side. And then I think the other piece that demographically is interesting is even though we have our experience study says, hey, people are living longer, right?
Mhm.
But you look at the last couple of years with COVID, there's been a bit of a reset in there where death rates have really gone up a lot.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a way we can factor that in. That'd probably be another $1,000 we'd have to pay for them to do it. But I think there's, at least in my mind, there's a bit of conservatism in the demographic increase.
Yeah, they were switching to the new public safety mortality tables as well, right? Yeah,
That's good, that's good.
yeah, they went from Pub 2010.
Does one include the teachers or?
That was
just
like
public
general,
safety? Now we have.
yes, now we're doing public safety, because
Yeah,
before it was
good,
like
good.
teachers and postal workers, things like that. So it's,
Yep.
it's more accurate.
More specific, yeah.
And I think we were fine on most of their assumption changes we were good with. The one that didn't make sense, or we didn't really see a reason to do, was when we're moving what we're paying for asset management and moving it to the contribution side instead of taking it off what we're actually making.
Yeah, that was the 1.25% of payroll,
Yeah,
adding that to the,
adding it to the
Contribution.
contribution rate. I don't see why we would need to do that.
yeah, I mean,
Currently working, it's gonna put more pressure on the plan, which is already gonna have more pressure put on it. I'm on page 8 of the GRS document.
yeah, it says the recommendation that the administrative expenses be removed from the investment return. That was, it just netted out against the investment return. Now they're saying, and included in the contribution, I assume the administrative expenses 1.25% of payroll. So, I mean, that,
All right, so basically if we do that, we're adding already in their assumption changes on the chart we saw there, under alternative investment return 1, that's 1.25% higher
mhm.
for that change. So that's what puts up to the 11.65% increase for total city contribution requirements. So if we didn't enact that one and we did it as we've been doing by taking it off the profits, that would take that basically down to 10.5
Right.
ish. So that would relieve some pressure.
Take which piece to 10.5? Looking at the.
So I'm total
Yep.
city contribution, so I just took obviously that minus
Oh,
that.
increase.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it increased by
Got it.
11.65,
Yep.
so it would bring us down. So I'd be in favor of not doing,
Okay, so we're taking out the administrative because that's already included in investment returns.
Right.
That they were netting it out prior to that.
Yeah, yep, I agree.
Instead of including in contribution rates.
Right.
That's good, yeah.
So I don't know where in GRS's assumptions that would be. I don't know if that's in demographics or,
That,
because it comes after merit longevity, so I'm guessing that would be their third column over demographic merit seniority assumption changes.
I'm thinking. I think it was under merit line, were they looking at the wage inflation payroll growth? There was no change there, but then we got into merit and longevity. You know, it was the page right after that, reviewing the administrative expense assumption. But I don't see that that's broken out separately up above in that green box.
Right. So other than that, I agreed with all their other assumption changes on there. I feel comfortable going down to a 6% assumed rate of return. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm comfortable with that. That was the only one that really hung out for me. I just think it puts undue pressure on the percent of payroll increase.
So it does, the 6% puts a ton of pressure on it, right? So we're going to
It
Yeah.
does.
46.52 versus 34.57.
8.7.
87, thank you. That's 11.65,
That's what I had, correct.
and then minus the 1.25. So 10.4,
Correct.
that's the percent increase.
Mhm.
So I guess even though we were more, let's me, I speak for myself, I'm comfortable with the 6% as an assumption. Question is, do we try to get there all in 1 year? You know, understanding the realities that we face as a community, do we say we go to 6.25 this year? You know, and then if the data proves out and everything next year still looks like 6 is the right, then we move to 6 at
Right,
that point.
because of the question that you had posed about the two evaluations, at least their answer was that we want to look at it again next year. And no additional fees or anything.
We're part of
But
their,
they would do a review and say, well,
yeah,
how close is this coming? I mean, you have to go all the way to 6. I'd rather see us go to like 6.25 myself. And ease into that, because I mean, you're looking at, 10% increase in contribution. And that's gonna get passed on to the taxpayers. And you know how the commission is when it comes to the millages and stuff, they get.
and I think their goal has been to try to cover in other areas of the city, but this will be too big probably to manage.
Yeah, because for a long time, they just reduced the city's operating.
Yeah.
By the
Offset of the police and
police and fire pension.
Yeah,
Well, and if you have less operating millage, where the cuts come. There's not like a bag of magic beans to use to
Right.
make that up.
so one of the questions that we posed to the actuaries was if it is the position of the board to keep the 6.5% investment return assumption, or, you know, to not go fully down to 6. What consequences should we expect from GRS? And the response was, if the board were to maintain its assumption, we would perform the evaluation using all board adopted assumptions, including whatever the board decides in terms of the rate of return. However, actuarial standards of practice would require us to include a statement in our report indicating that the prescribed assumption significantly conflicts with what in our professional judgment would be reasonable.
And that would be for this year, they would say that? because they're saying it's gotta be 6% this year.
Yeah, no higher than 6%.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, when I read this, you know, I think if the actuaries had their way, it would be 5%. Yeah,
Yeah, and then you look at the contribution rates,
right, yeah.
commission
I
would
mean,
have a heart
be-
attack.
be- Because they do throw that out as an option at the end of the
Yes.
report,
Mhm.
and, you know, that's 25% increase in city contribution.
So, I mean, they're gonna put a little asterisk in our report, but if we're gonna reevaluate it again next year, we could always, like you said, we could step towards doing that. I mean, who else is really gonna see? It doesn't really make much difference that they put a disclaimer in there. I mean, we're not submitting a corrective action plan to the state. We're still,
Right.
it's not a stress plan. It brings it close, but there's nobody else who's going to see it other than an internal document.
Right.
So I think leaving it, if we choose to go to 6.25, and we get a small disclaimer put on it, I don't really see how that would affect. Especially that we're gonna be reevaluating it in the next year anyway.
You don't see an issue with that, do you? I mean,
You know, I'm not 100% sure. There's an additional sentence on here where the actuaries say, you know, for GASB work, which they do a separate valuation. We will need to use an assumption that can be deemed reasonable based upon actuarial standards of practice. For example, no higher than 6%.
But we've always had to use different numbers for GASB anyway.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So. I mean, yeah, ultimately, it's the board's.
You know, and I believe they said, you know, Public Act 202, where the state is trying to be a watchdog on all the pension plans and stuff. That their uniform assumptions are being lowered in conjunction with the decline in capital market. So I don't know if they're using 6%. That's where part of that's coming from.
Well, and one of the things that we were talking about with Jeremy was that when the actuaries did their experience study, they were using capital market projections at the end of 2020, before the market had dipped.
Mhm.
So the forecasts were all a little bit more negative in terms of the outlook. But, you know, so it's possible that, given that the market has now taken a dip, you know, you could see that capital market assumption come back up a little bit
Mhm.
next year.
So we're now at 34.87. What were we at before? Were we at 36? We were higher before, right? It came down or last year?
We were at 35.60,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then it dropped to 34.87. So we'd be bumping that up to 44 point something.
45.16.
Yeah,
Well, that would be 45.16 if we go to the full 6.0.
1.7 million.
Instead of 1.8.
Yeah, it's one, what's else, 1.625?
Yeah, what would that be?
We'd have to do some.
My quick math says we'd be at 42.37% if we went at 6.25%.
I think that's a little bit more palatable than, you know, 45. and a quarter.
It definitely is. I mean, and somebody could choose, you know, this will be like footnote, like you said, Jake, or it could be probably in their cover letter to their whatever they send out. So somebody could take it and try to make a big deal out of it and try to get in the press and things like that. I think we certainly have reasoned logic for what we're doing, right? To not have the roller coaster, okay, now we're gonna take you up 5 points or 10 points. And,
Mhm.
you know, we're trying to moderate it a little bit based on this very different actuarial numbers are giving us and make sure this is really true before we, you know, incur extra taxes on
Mhm.
taxpayers. I think we can also say that using a 6.25% is a very reasonable assumption, given that MERS is at 6.85, was it, or?
Ours is at 7, the state's at 6.85.
Yeah, so I think it'd be nice if we could validate that their asset class is pretty close, you know, at least total equity versus total bonds and fixed income.
Sure. How funded is the MERS pension? Is it as good as this, or is it a percent? Do they have a corrective action plan?
The-
7%?
The city's MERS pension plan is 58%, I think, funded.
So 7's not good,
So that incorporates the 7%.
right? Which 58 is definitely,
Yeah.
that's 12 points below the corrective action plan.
The 2 points.
I think it was 70%.
I thought
It's 70
345 pensions, I believe, are 70%.
Yeah, compared to other pension plans around the state,
60.
Gable Reuters said that we're in good shape compared to the others.
Right.
And it's because we're a little more conservative.
Yeah.
In the investment side, so we don't get our brains beat out when the market takes a dump.
I think the other thing we could look at is, when I was in the last NAPERS conference, they were talking about phasing in contribution increases, especially of that size, and bring them in over a 3, they said no more than 5, but ideally a 3-year period, which kind of takes a little bit of the burden off, allows you to phase them in and kind of plan a little bit better.
Yeah, just realizing it's an inexact science too.
Mhm.
It was interesting though, that we're at 58% funding level, even with the 7%. So,
Right, it kind of tells you that's too high, right?
yeah,
Seven's
so if you
probably
said
not
they
good.
took a 6.5 even, then all of a sudden you can see them to be much lower, or significantly lower.
Or the percent come up. Yeah.
There's something else in here that they were looking at us accepting amortization policy. Right now, anytime that there's a change in the plan, it's amortized over 30 years. The benefit changes we're doing amortized over 16 to 30. Assumption actuarial cost methods, 18 to 30. The remaining unfunded to 23.
The market, when the market goes up and down, we incorporate that over like a 3-year period as well.
We do that 5-year spread.
For 5 years.
It's 5 years.
5 years,
spread.
yeah.
5 years. Yeah.
So you don't get nailed with the big losses and that you don't get all the benefit of the big gains.
Yeah, so I guess the other option is, are we constrained, are we as aggressive as we can be with our investments, given the public act that we're under? Or are we even a little bit lower?
I think the Public Act just looks at the types of investments. It doesn't look at it, because I know at one time, one of the commissioners suggested that, have you guys ever looked at junk bonds? You seem to do, a lot of funds are doing really great on junk bonds. Yes,
Yeah,
we
don't wanna go
told
there.
them, no.
So the only reason I'm asking that is there's also, you know, as we look into our asset classes next year and where we're invested, could we go a little higher on the stock, a little lighter on the bond to up our investment return? Would we be comfortable with that? We could have cap trust model it out for us. And could we get to a point
Yeah,
where
because
some
we-
adjustment like that where we get a beginning return of 6.25%?
Yeah, we just have to adjust our targets.
Yeah, and I had asked Jeremy about that
Advice,
last
yeah.
meeting,
Yeah,
and they sounded kind of cold to the idea at the time, but we could ask them to model it out, like you said, let's project it and see, where does that end up?
Yeah, so
So.
what's
Lily-
the range we can be based on the public act? Yeah.
Right. My memory's a little bit foggy of the public act, but can you go back to the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Because
Which one?
the one that's,
Jeremy's?
yeah, Jeremy's, because one of the, there at the bottom of that one slide.
Is it this one?
So those two lines that are underneath the current targets.
Oh.
Those are modeled out different asset mixes. And I can't remember what he said that they were, but I think the bottom one, the hypo 2 was like a 70-30, if I remember correctly.
It was high. I read that, I
Yeah.
just don't remember what.
It's pretty high.
Yeah.
And the hypo one was somewhere in the middle,
Mhm.
what we're currently at.
I think you said it was closer to what you guys were prior, like a few years ago, when, before you switched to,
It was a 50-50 blend before.
was that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, we
Might be that.
gradually increased the stock, because
55-45.
when I first came on, we were restricted, we couldn't have any more than 10% stocks, the rest of it all had to be bonds.
Wow,
Yeah,
glad you're not there anymore. We'd be paying 100%.
we progressed. Made a lot of changes over the years.
My recollection is that the maximum allocation for equities is 70% within your Act 345 portfolio.
Yeah,
You can't
it's
have
a
more than-
Public Investment Act, I can't remember the damn
Yeah,
number
it's
on
like
it.
Act 314 of 1965 or something.
Yeah, just, maybe that needs to be looked at by the state.
You can't have any more than 5% in any one company,
Right,
so,
so they can protect the fund
right.
through diversification. We don't want to get
Sure.
So what
with
is
all
our,
the Bed Bath and Beyond stock. You know, drops 25%, but not as much as the CEO.
okay, so our current is a 6.5%, right? That's what our current assumption is. So the one item we're looking to adjust is their administrative fee. We didn't want to accept that because it's already included in our investment results.
Mhm.
Do we have anything with the demographic assumptions that we would want to include? Or seniority assumptions or merit?
Let's see what the proposals. Okay, the wage growth. They said to keep that at 3.5, and that shows straight across the board. Price inflation, they said, recommend that remains at 2.75. No proposal there. Merit and longevity. Current assumptions are. This is on page 7. Okay, they had expected average pay increase of 5.3, but it was actually 5.6 from six. This is over from 2016 to 2021. Wage inflation 3.5, which is actually 2.8. So the estimated merit longevity is expected at 1.8, but the actual was 2.8. So they want to bump up so many sample years of service. So at the beginning of the year, like 0.25% in their assumptions. And what's your merit in longevity? Yeah, I'm not sure where the heck that's hidden in there.
I didn't see anything I would propose different from what they did. You know, I think they're the experts on some of this and
And if you want to
nothing
look at
seems
it,
unreasonable.
if you want to look at experience, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So. Well, that one there, we would adopt the merit seniority pay increase assumptions. Mortality assumption.
It looks like we're currently at 55%. Box, page 12. So if we upped it from 55, if we felt comfortable, and it's something we have to be for another meeting, we'd have to have Jeremy model this, CapTrust model this for us, I think, which would be helpful. We can see if we took it from 55 to 60 or 65, let's say, what would be the expected impact on our investment rate of return? Let's see,
And that may offset some of the,
some or all that difference between the 65 and the 6 is what I'm thinking.
yeah,
You know, so we're essentially saying, okay, we get what you guys are saying, our asset return is gonna be 6 based on our current asset mix. So we're gonna take your numbers, but we're also gonna try to adjust up our returns.
Sure.
okay.
We can't do it live here, but I think
Can
we
we
can make it
request to do it so it's available at the next meeting?
I can do that.
from CapTrust. Yeah, that'd be great, yeah. And it would be good, because then we can say we've requested that.
Mhm.
And can you put that in the minutes, please? That'll make
yeah.
sure if there's any, I know you would anyway, but
Definitely.
so what's the next step with their, like the experience study coming into the valuation model? Is that a step that GRS takes, or no, not really? Not until next year. We won't see a new valuation until next year.
What do you mean?
We would see one in February.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they would take these into account for our 2022.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do with the experience study is essentially approve the assumptions coming out of the experience study to go into the next evaluation.
Mhm.
Is that our?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these. That's why I wish they had somebody here to go over some of these things and answer questions.
Will we invite it, or do we
No.
invite it for next meeting then?
We could invite them for next meeting. They weren't invited to this meeting.
Because are we a decision point today, or could we wait till next meeting to do our?
That I don't know when they
I
need
think Linda was hoping
for
that a
today.
decision would be made today, because the longer we prolong this, the longer we prolong
Getting the
getting started
report,
on the actuarial report.
and you need figures
And
from
then
them
that
for the budget.
factors into the budget and
Yeah.
to the auditing reports.
Can they get started if we approve like 95% of it and just a couple, whatever items we want to look at?
I would, I don't know the answer to that, but I would assume they could at least pick off some pieces. We've already sent them some of our data and they began to work on it, so. I would assume they could at least get going, but.
I'd be comfortable. I think that's kind of what everybody's thinking here. Should we say, okay, we're comfortable incorporating all these into our next valuation with the exception of, right, the 6%, we think it should be 625, and we're gonna go look at, talk to Cap Trust about how we get to that, because we are in a pretty conservative
Mhm.
asset mix, as GRS has pointed out, right?
Mhm.
And also the administrative fees. So I think those are
Yeah.
the two that I see that,
Yeah, because some of these charts in here, like the retirement, current proposed assumptions. Members retiring in the next year, retirement age 60, we figure 30% would retire. Oh, and ones I would think around that's got,
what
and I
page
don't
on?
know the age, oh, this is page 21. Oh, you know, if you, there's a service on some of these, and most everybody's got 25 and out. You know, and it seems like a lot of them are taking advantage of that, unless they go into the drop program. And the Jerry Woodbury's, I don't think they're around much
No.
anymore.
Nobody's doing more than 30.
Yeah,
For the-
that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So. At least they say at 65, 100% would be retired. Of course, it's controlled by the act.
Yeah.
So those charts are low.
Yes, this is one we want to talk to them about then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
It'd be helpful probably to if we send them a list of questions in advance, because last time we asked them these questions without an advance notice,
Mhm.
Derek was not able to
Well, I
respond.
hope Derek brings some assistance.
Hmm?
I hope Derek would bring some assistance.
But I guess, yeah, we can tell them the ones we're really questioning, be helpful, but I don't want to see them twist in the wind again and not, and us not get what we need.
And withdrawal separation from active membership, current assumption is. Gives the percentages. At certain age groups. But they're proposing that there's probably gonna be more. At least in the. Police department. Withdrawing.
Yeah, on that chart, I started off because the numbers were weird. Those were our currents at the top. So when we asked them before, they're all maxing out at 65, 100% retirement. And then our service is basically, especially for fire, 25 and out up to their 30 would be their drop, and it's showing at 100%. So I felt pretty comfortable with those retirement assumptions.
The disability things, those were.
They did address
Slightly
this, yeah.
increased.
Good.
So I guess the demographics go along with their changes there.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with these. I wonder if we, and I'm not sure if we tweaked any of these, would be much impact, since they did get the 25 years service thing right this time. Maybe we say, everything else we're okay with for now, we'll revisit it next year and then work on our questions for next year on the things you might want to adjust.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, I think they already asked us to provide questions ahead of time for this meeting, and so if you had further questions. Unless they're like. I don't know.
Yeah, to me, the biggie was that percentage of that rate of return.
Yeah.
That's the one that,
In the 25 years of service thing, it looks like they have fixed now, because that was when you called out
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
long time
everybody's
ago,
good.
and it didn't make sense, yeah.
well, there's a page.
Well, I think that maybe we even called that out in the first draft of the
Yeah,
experience
it was
study
still
that
on in the first draft.
they sent to us.
I remember
Yeah.
this page here, it's
Two tries, yeah.
the information provided by the city
Mhm.
to them. Stating, you know, what unit it is, the eligibility, the multiplier, maximum benefit. And when I was doing the reports, I take this down to human resources and say, sign off on that.
Yeah.
Make the changes,
Mhm.
because I don't know if there's been you wouldn't know if there's a letter of understanding that may have come through,
Right.
but they're supposed to. Because that would have picked up the 25 and out on that thing right there.
So I guess, so in my mind, it's two things we want to exclude, approve everything except the proposed rate of return, we want to do 625, and then get rid of the administrative fees. Is everybody comfortable if I made a motion on that? Is there anything else we ought to be including in that?
Yeah. We have to have a starting point.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion. Then we accept the assumptions in the actuarial experience study, with the exception of the 1.25% administrative fee, which is already covered in our net returns, net investment returns. And this, and the investment rate of return, which we want to, which we will set at 6.25%.
For their assumption. That's what they're gonna use for their assumption.
Yeah, we will set it at 6.25%. We have in there for the assumption. Thank you. Based on how do we want to say this? Based on the plans to adjust our asset allocation.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. On what will be submitted to the actuaries as accepted and the other assumptions. Is there any discussion, board? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a request of Lily? Could you please send us that motion just for all of us to take a quick look, make sure? Sounds like what we thought we said.
I think I know what I said, but I'm not sure. Was that what you're-
I want to make sure articulate
Oh,
correctly.
God.
Perfect.
So your next life will be in Congress?
This is a lot more fun.
Okay,
We all listen to each other, we're nice to each other. We're trying to do the right thing.
Okay, we have a policy to review under new business. The election policy. I believe you said there really isn't any change to this.
I made no
Look at it.
changes grammatically to it, so unless there's something you guys see in there that you think needs to be updated.
I think when we have this rewritten, we cleared up a lot of things, and it seems to be working. I mean, it's not like it happens every year. Election is
Right,
held, and it's primarily for police and fire representatives.
You guys know how this works, the election policy for rep?
Yeah.
For our rep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Chris or Jake, did you guys speak to it? I think this is an interesting thing for everybody to hear and important, you know.
Yeah.
You guys can give us feedback if during public comment, which would be helpful.
You
If you observe anything.
Do you want to wait to public comment for that or just?
Yeah, but you can describe it now and then, yeah.
Oh,
We're looking
our
at the
vacancy
policy
comes
of the board
back,
is-
yeah. So luckily, we haven't had too many vacancies. I don't know how long John was in this position. Extended period of time, so,
That was in it for quite a while, so was his dad, Larry.
yeah, I think probably the biggest thing we updated to it was that if it was an uncontested election, that we didn't have to send out and have votes for it. So that was the big update last time, is that if it's an uncontested election, it saves a lot of time for going around and collecting all the paperwork for it and not allowing any write-in candidates either. So that way you don't have people putting in random things here and there, and just kind of mucking it up. So, but the timeline seemed pretty straightforward. And then if I was to leave, it sounds like there'd be an election to fill my remainder of my vacancy. And then there would have to be another one to take it for the next term. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, because I think at one point, David, they just assumed, well, if you left, there was election, they'd automatically have like, whatever, 3 years or
Right.
5 years on it or whatever. So, okay, we have no changes on that.
That's how it works.
And
And this was revised before I came on and ran smooth when I took over for Bagwell and.
yeah,
and then so.
Was yours uncontested too?
They will always be on.
that's kind of like these citizen appointees too. You don't see them knocking down the door.
So Dave, you guys, anything you want to tell us? Good to hear.
Okay. You got trust. Not you attending, but you have all the valuable information.
He just provided really one slide, other than,
That one.
oh, yeah. Here's his,
Oh, okay.
his breakdown, and then it was basically this, which is just a picture version of what I said earlier, of what our market value is. That we took a little bit of a hit. This is all that he had for us.
It's gonna keep bouncing for a little while yet, I imagine. Not
Yeah.
quite done.
It'll be interesting to see what effect the election will ever have.
Oh, it'll do something and then it'll
Oh, yeah, yes.
settle, yeah.
Guillermo T will do something.
Pleasantly surprised when I read the minutes from last meeting and we had a gain.
I don't know.
Maybe this
Just
month.
took it
And
all
then I
in.
scrolled
Not-
back out. It's all
Yeah,
gone.
what we had gained before we lost.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a teeter totter. Public comment. None?
I'll make Lily write something else.
He's excited about that.
Wow.
Linda would be proud.
Yeah, exactly. Just in case anybody was wondering, I'm looking at the MERS investment policy statement. And their board has approved the following asset class allocation ranges. Global equity base allocation is 60%. With a minimum of 35 and a maximum of 70. Global fixed income base allocation is 20% with a minimum allocation of 10% and maximum of 60%.
How much?
60,
60,
yeah.
okay, wow.
And then private investments. I'm not sure what they mean necessarily by private investments, but base allocation is 20%. There's no minimum allocation and maximum allocation is 30%.
That might be real estate
Could be real estate, it could be other, you know,
tips,
could be a coffee farm in Australia.
Mexican strawberry futures. That's always been a good one.
The-
Right up there with lettuce in California.
Yeah. Romaine. Brought to you by Wendy's.
Okay, thanks. So that just shows they're a little more aggressive than we are, which
Yeah, they've got
we're
a
kind of figuring, so that's maybe part of the difference.
right. They got a little more room to move,
Mhm, a lot more, yeah.
especially on the bonds.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing else under public comment. Get your calendars out, boys.
17 is a no good.
Okay.
Regular date. That's easy. You're always good.
I've got a 19 or a 20. Or 21.
I do.
Okay.
But my screen is kind of small. Let me get to October here.
See if I can find her on my list.
And then we have, well, then if Jeremy can't make it, maybe he can send Dory.
Yeah, it'd be nice if at least one of them could come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Say-
need one of them because we want to
say
talk about that
19
asset
to 20.
allocation report.
I have
and what are the
19,
scenarios.
20, 21.
19, 20.
Oh, excuse me, they got hers for- Not, at least the 21st.
No, I don't see anything on hers on the 21st.
Let me see, what's that? The 20th does not work for me. I will be on the 21st. I'll be convention up in Shady Creek.
I think Linda's free on the 19th. We're talking about afternoon, right?
Yeah,
I could do the afternoon of the 19th.
That work.
19th. Is it 1 o'clock again, same time like as we were,
1:30.
1:30, whatever it was.
32, yes.
And do you guys want GRS at that meeting for any reason?
I think we made our decision.
Right.
Could get them totally pissed off. I guess they can show up.
They're welcome to come. I guess maybe
Oh,
that's.
yeah, they're
the-
welcome.
Leave it
If
open.
they have any concern, because you guys will give them the feedback of what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we'll want a new draft so that it can be finalized. You can look it over next time.
I don't think they're gonna look any uglier.
Right.
Okay, so it's October 19th at 1:30.
Mhm.
You'll let us know if it's in the mission chambers or the.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
conference room.
If the smaller room in City Hall is available, I'll book it.
We got 2 conference rooms up there.
There are only ones
Oh,
as of today. Quick to do this meeting.
May occur in the other one, though.
Maybe.
well, there was an open house on Friday to go over all the new technological
I know, I'm going.
features. Yeah.
Okay, we are concluded with our meeting. We're ready to go. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, it's fun.
Appreciate you guys coming in.
I knew about 50% of what.
Cassie and Blake.
Yeah.
We're down in St. Louis with Rob and.
Yeah, this last weekend.
Yeah.